emotions are an important part of all experiences. Today we're going to look at the emotion language for creating XR experiences. Certainly this is coming at a time when there's a deep calling for meeting emotional needs of the moment. So naming that. For healing, for connection, for flourishing, with well-being and health in mind. This panel is all about the language of emotion for engagement, how we create emotions in XR, what emotions work the best in XR, how we refine the emotions in our work. We will identify and discuss the benefits and best practices for creating emotion in XR, ideally for good. So today we're going to gamify the talk, follow a broad 3 sections of the journey and discussion. The first will be about defining terms, so setting the context for emotion, getting into the science. The second part is emotion applied to experiences and specifically XR games. And part 3 is extrapolating meaning, creating a new language for emotion and how we apply it. So I wanted to introduce you to the panelists who are here with me, and I'm so excited to be up here with amazing creators and creatives, people who live and embody that message. So we have Sophia Batchelor right next to me. Sophia studies the neuroscience of immersive technology and sits at the intersection of data, neuroscience, and human-computer interaction. Her PhD investigated how our brains interpret the world by looking at how people acquire skills in virtual reality and focused on understanding the transferability and generalization of learning. She now works at the Alan Turing Institute across several citizen science and AI projects. She seeks to understand how to make technology more equitable, accessible, and kinder, because ultimately we will soon be living in a future that we've created for each other today. Jude Dai is the CEO of Immersive Square, a hub that connects human-centric VR to the general public through XR experience, virtually or physically through events. Jude aims to feature healthy, inclusive, and collective experiences and advocates for diversity in new technologies. Jude believes that the foundation of human connection is established by our connection with nature, our history, and the yin and yang energy with others. Her design principle is focused on simplicity, which is reflected in her VR production, Lantern Ensemble. I see it moving on the side, I can see it. A minimalist, realistic, and collective VR calligraphy experience that succeeds in bringing emotion out of participants rather than imposing emotion upon them. And on the far side, since 1992, Nicole Lazzaro has run XEODesign to unlock human potential through play. A world-renowned XR developer and innovator, Nicole designed the first iPhone game to plant 16,000 trees in Madagascar and was the first person to use facial expressions to measure player reactions to discover the 4 keys to fun. Her work inspires millions of leading developers worldwide, including The Sims, Myst, and Star Wars. One of the top 20 women working in video games, Nicole's work has been widely cited by global news media such as Wired, Rolling Stone, Fast Company, CNN, CNET, Wall Street Journal, and Samantha Bee. She has advised the Obama White House and the U.S. State Department on the use of games to improve our world, and Nicole is currently developing Follow the White Rabbit, a mind-bending XR adventure about a magician whose magic one day suddenly works. And introducing myself, I'm C.Krause, an XR experience designer fostering metaverse fluency. I thrive at the intersection of technology, creativity, and well-being. I founded the XR studio and consultancy MindWise. I teach about digital well-being in XR at Stanford University, and I'm the author of the book Designing Wonder, Leading Transformative Experiences in VR. I've created and run numerous experiences in XR using presence, storytelling, meditation, and creative flow. My most recent experience, FlowCam, is in preview stage right now. And by the way, if any of our conversation piques your interest, we're going to have an after party. So a toast for the book Designing Wonder, as well as a breakout conversation with all of us after this talk. So if anything whets your appetite for deeper conversation, follow us to the pool deck on the 7th floor. I think we all need some fresh air. We'll have a celebratory time, a toast, and time to talk. And that's going to be at about 3:30 as long as you like, brief or long. It gives us a chance to talk a little more. Okay, so much to talk about and celebrate today. This emotion panel brought us together from an intersection that blends science, creative arts, gaming, and it's really fantastic because you feel that in your body as you're experiencing it. How many people at a time were you experiencing?
We had about 700 people through festivals, and yeah, we were in Sakura, we were in Banff, and I wanted to say, if I could just take a minute about when there's a user-generated content, one thing that is very important is to focus on curation. If there's one bad content that is on the link, it's very intrusive. So the way to do it, one is through super cool technology. AI technology, visual recognition, suppress that content, right? The other way is to really put user accountable. If they are in a physical space, and you lead them through a festival that has lantern, your directional experience for them to get into the experience is very respectful. They will pay respectfully. So those 700 users, I met every single one of them.
I like too that you're mentioning specific design and having that design of the interaction in mind, which kind of brings us over to Nicole. Looking at game-specific designs and emotion, I'm curious about what emotions are easier to design for and what ones are more of a challenge and nuanced as you incorporate game design with emotion in mind. Where do you start as a first step?
Great, well, wonderful. It's wonderful to be on this panel and share the stage with everyone. I'm super excited. We started this in 2020, actually, because when the world ended, and so we're finally back here at South by. And we have, a mindfulness expert, we have a neuroscience, we have an artist, and then me, well, I'm like a game designer on the panel. So lots of different perspectives. What I really enjoy about Jude's work is the lantern. For those who don't know this, this lantern tradition is often to say goodbye. It's often an expression. And so by using that interaction, by using that setting, what she's doing is amplifying different emotions to make a more whole experience. So I create a safe space, like we were saying earlier. And in a sense, that's what I do. So I create these XR experiences, and it's through the language of emotion, through interaction design. So I was the first person to measure emotion on people's faces. We used facial action coding and created the 4 keys to fun. And what you think about now that we're going from XR to the metaverse is, well, what are the opportunities going from pancake monitors, flat screen video, whatever, into 3D? What can we do? Well, the easiest emotions to create are these action emotion pairs. I first started this research. Well, basically, it was a while ago. I was, at the turn of this century, I was standing on top of a temple in Egypt, staring out over the desert. It was a hot, dry, dusty day. And I reached down to get the last sip of water, from my canteen, and I stopped and stood in amazement because there at my feet, on the top of this temple, someone had carved a game board. I thought, wow, 2,000 years ago, people had stood where I stood and thought to pass their time with the game. And what would we, thinking forward, what would they think of the games we play now? And then looking forward in 2020, what kind of games would we want to play then? What kind of emotions do they want to create? What kinds of genres? What kind of new experiences? And then I realized that everything we understood about games would have to change because we didn't have the language of emotion in interaction design and game design to create the kinds of feelings I wanted with my friends. So that's what started my research with the 4 keys. So here we are in 2022. Going forward to, let's say, 2040, where are we going with the metaverse? What do we want to do? The easiest, so that's my research team continues, is what we're doing with Follow the White Rabbit. But the easiest emotions, like for a creator, if you're thinking about emotion, I used to think that it was popcorn. that basically, okay, they would just come up, pop, 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 as I was measuring them, and I would just identify what was happening, and I could say, okay, this action created this emotion, or as a designer, I had to say this game design element creates the potential for the experience of that emotion. But that actually wasn't what I found as well, at all. And this was many years ago, so this was research I did, a really small in 2004. Instead, what we found is that they're threaded, they're braided. I found that there are certain emotions required other emotions first. And so the important thing boils down is to creating action-emotion pairs. So the 4 keys to fun is all this, there's a language of interaction design, emotion from interaction design, just like there's a language of emotion if you're writing a script or if you're an actor in your body. So probably the easiest thing in XR for game design is the experience of wonder, like we've been talking about a little bit here. The wonder and amazement, curiosity, wonder, and surprise. The other one we see a lot of jump scares. How many people have been experienced jump scares in XR, right? Yeah, okay. How many people like that? Oh, okay, all right. So the thing is that jump scare is so easy to trigger, right? It's so easy to trigger fear because you can't see it, suddenly you're in harm, and so that creates this emotion of fear right off the bat. And what could help? And so then what do we do with that? Where do we take it? Because we think about like a famous director like say Hitchcock. He's not the master of fear, right? He's the master of suspense. Yeah, so there are, and we talk about emotion states. I love what Sophia was saying earlier, is that there's many different kinds of things that we can use to describe emotions, or the sensations we're getting in our body. So the key for me is to, like, what's hard, or what's the value? There are new emotions. The world of the metaverse is so social right now, which is why we have the NFT craze, because it's using the social emotions, interactions that produce social emotions. You sell at auction, for example, to drive valuation to do these things. That there's these new opportunities, because the metaverse essentially is this merging of physical and digital worlds. So not only is the digital world 3D and more realistic 3D, like Sophia was saying, it's also coming into our space. It's also digital, right? It's also in our meat space. And so then what can we do with those emotions? What are those new things? And so we get these loops that we're bringing them together. So just in real short, and then I'll wrap up so we can have some time for more questions, is that I create these interactions and knowing what the likelihood of these the emotion states that come from them. And then as I move through my world, I provide these new interactions, over time. So you can create almost a graph of this. So over time, here are the different levels in my game, the different worlds I go to, and then these are the different interactions. And then I'm going to craft them together to create these emotional arcs. So there's this palette. It's almost like a color script from Pixar, if you're familiar with that. You can create an emotion script, or I call it an emotion architecture. And then that architecture gets blended all the way through the game, and then you can interact your way through it. So that's kind of my approach. And the real key thing is to take that moment of wonder or curiosity. With the moment of wonder last, there's this novelty window. It's from novelty, in addition to some of the things we'll talk about. And it opens, but then it closes after about 15 minutes. Then we no longer feel like it's a novel experience. So how can we take this very strong sensation of novelty and extend it over time and try that? So that's one thing I have people do a lot. Just as an exercise in creating more motion. It's like if you have these are the new snap lenses, so it's like a 3D, they're just completely self-contained, it's kind of crazy. But it'll project holograms right in the real room. Once you've seen a hologram, that's great. But then if you could extend that experience for 20 minutes, then that's when we know enough about emotion. That's how we know enough about structuring the emotion. So we have the nouns and the verbs of this language of emotional state, but then we can create whole sentences, then whole paragraphs, then whole books, in a sense of emotional design, going through the entire experience. So that's a little bit about what I like to do. Let's hand it back so we can get some more questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we're on that note, kind of stepping back a little bit, just wanted to ask the audience if you can remember the first time you put on, say, a VR headset, or you started using XR or playing a game that you really loved. Just picture what your body might have been doing. And for most people, if you ask them or if you take some kind of video of them, they drop open a little bit and their mouth drops open, and I call that wonder face. And sometimes we think it looks silly on the cover of magazines or things like that, but it tends to be because the physical body is mirroring what's happening. And that's why personally I'm so drawn to investigating wonder, because it's shown to be on one side of a spectrum equally strong, and on the other side is anger. So how could we take wonder and awe and make these experiences more catered to fostering our imagination, our creative capacity, and also our sense of well-being?
Yes, wonder is like one of our favorite emotions.
Yeah.
Like my favorite game is
Yeah.
Myst, and I've worked on 3 of them, and the feeling of wonder when they put, I think it was like Myst 5, they put their hand, that wasn't their hand, it was the cursor, they're actually putting it on the mouse, but they said they put their hand on that Myst book and they heard that original sound, they felt little tingles coming up, up and then up the neck and up the spine. So there's really interesting, like, digital, not physical signatures for different emotional states. And so, there's wonder, which is one, there's curiosity, which is another. We'll have some disagreement on the panel whether a curiosity is a state or an emotion.
Yeah.
But there are these really interesting, and if you can get in there with really fine language with your teams to pick them apart, then you can create these lovely, tapestries of, rich emotional experiences as you go through.
So you can look at physical states of the body and like piloerection, like when you get those sensations, and kind of tease out why, for the most part, when you say, oh, what do I want to design for in an XR game or experience, it's usually something that we would call awesome or wonderful. So just wanted to take a moment and ask, how do we design for wonder and awe with that in mind? You know, that's my wheelhouse and kind of what I love to do. What do we do in terms of how to make wonder and awe experiences that are beneficial for people? And if you want to talk more about that, certainly stay for the after party, because that's what we'll be talking about with designing wonder. Specifically, I looked at 5 facets of wonder that I saw, because you could take wonder like, I wonder why something is occurring, or a deeper sense of wonder like liminal states of the brain and dream states, or the overview effect that astronauts feel when they're looking at planet Earth. So there is a feeling of oneness that I think can be very evocative for humans, and VR and XR has that potential.
So I think you had a first point around, can we design for awe and wonder? Yes. To kind of call back those fundamental building blocks. We have a reductive formula